Good afternoon, everyone. Give it a couple of more moments for folks to join, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. I'm just going to give a couple more seconds for anyone else to join, and then we'll get started. Thanks for your time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Can everyone see my screen here?
Yeah, it's definitely up.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you make it into presentation mode, David?
Oh, yeah, actually.
There we go.
Okay, we'll get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll try to keep this meeting brief, but thank you so much for joining us for this meeting, as well as the congressional meeting, which are being scheduled. Most of you shall have received a meeting invitation, calendar invite. If not, you will probably get one by the end of the day. I think there's only about 2 or 3 meetings that we're still in discussion for. So to start, I'd like to turn it over to Adina for just a couple of opening remarks here. Adina.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. I'm just going to take a second because we want to get into the meat of this. I just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. And after several weeks of already plenty of ISRI time to participate in this targeted fly-in this week, we can't do it without you. We are obviously canvassing Washington, talking to people. We've repeated this to you guys throughout several of the committee meetings, that we're talking to the administration, talking to members of Congress, really kind of getting the word out there about how the shipping concerns are affecting our industry. But really, the story is so much more effectively told when it comes from you all directly, where you can talk about your unique circumstances or your experiences, the people you've talked to, which ports you're working in. And so we're just really, really grateful. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to David. He's really done just a superb job in organizing this and making sure that you guys have what you need, but certainly questions are more than welcome as he goes through this briefing. And with that, I will turn it back to David. So thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Adina. So as Adina just mentioned, what we're focusing on, you are maybe in your business may be in a state or district that allows us to connect with that leader of the Transportation Senate or House Committee. So we're using that as leverage in order to make sure that they hear from their constituents or businesses that they represent via their constituency. Moving to the, so as you recall from our board meetings last week, we're mostly focusing on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. The subcommittee has jurisdiction over regulation of ocean shipping, but also reaching out to other members on the committee, including the chair of the full committee, but other committee members who may have written about the issues recently, made statements about them, or demanded action in some way or another. And same goes for the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. The Surface Transportation Maritime, that subcommittee has the oversight of the FMC Transportation Board, FRA. So with that, we'll quickly go over the issues. Many of you, if you've received the calendar invitation to meet with your member, your senator or representative's office, you'll see that attached to that is the one pager of the issues. It out at the beginning outlines just the reason that we're holding these meetings or this mini virtual fly-in. But after that, it shows trade data committee, trade data for that specific state, but also national and other broad categories where we show that the recycling industry's impact on trade. We also have economic impact data for that specific state from 2019, which is a link that we can provide to the office if they'd like to see a little bit more information on that financial data. We do that, we include those kind of things because some of the big hooks, as many of you know, with congressional offices is, number one, are you a constituent? Will this somehow affect businesses or whatever in my state? But then also two, how can you put it into make it into dollars and cents? The stories are great, but also giving them a bottom line in dollars and cents gives them an understanding of the economic impact of them taking action that we're hoping that they do. So each one of these is outlined in about one paragraph on the issues document, and please let me know if many of you have already seen it in some form or another during the trade committee or within the working group. But these are the issues that we're really trying to get at. And here are the asks, as we mentioned briefly in the previous board meetings. Number one, to give the FMC more authority to actively adapt to sudden, widespread, and staggering fluctuations. That's pretty much the thing that we're looking at for them to do to kind of stop this from happening in the future, especially when it comes to unexpected fluctuations like the huge influx of all of the COVID manufactured stuff. So that's something that we're looking at as far as trying to get the situation taken care of in the long term. Is for a little bit more immediate action on what they can do, who they can put pressure on, and also bringing, shedding more light onto the issue so that it can light a fire into some people to take care of it are the second two bullet points here under the asks. Expanding pressure on the agencies. A lot has been done, as Dina and Billy has mentioned in previous board member meetings with the FMC in order to get them to, try to continue. They're doing an investigation right now, of course, and trying to make sure that they take all actions available to remedy the situation, but also reaching out to Commerce, USTR, and those other kind of things to make it more all-inclusive, all the agencies working together and communicating about the issues so that they can more effectively and more forcefully take care of it. And then lastly, also requesting reports and holding hearings, as Billy said in another meeting, requesting reports. That's something that gets answers. It at least gets people to make sure that they're responding to Congress on and showing these trade data so that we can actually use that and point to certain things and say, here it is right here in your own data. But also holding hearings, bringing people in, asking questions, and making sure that we keep this on the spotlight, which on our communication side opens up other opportunities for us to ride this wave until something comes out of it that's beneficial to our members here. So those are, like I said, the asks, the issues, those kind of things are all outlined on that very brief 2-page document that was included in your calendar invite. If you have not received it yet, I'll send it to you regardless of whether or not your specific meeting has been scheduled. I'll send that to everyone by the end of the day, but it will have the trade specific data for your state.
Dave?
Yes.
Greg Brown, can you go back to that last chart for a second?
Sure.
So that middle section is enormous. I mean, the world revolves around it to improve the trade balance. So are you just trying to target that one issue? Because the trade balance is an enormous issue. So are we talking about just, I want to make sure that the conversation doesn't stray. that it's just about containers, not about overall economic policy, which is been
Exactly.
screwed up for decades.
Exactly. We do it in the context of, and I'll turn it to Dina if she has any additional comment, but we do it in the context of taking these actions in the shipping container in order to make sure that that is a small leg on the much larger economic approach to improving the trade imbalance. So we will definitely to everyone, try to keep that in the context of what the outcomes of improving this situation with those how that'll factor into the trade imbalance. Improving the
Yeah,
trade.
and just to add to that, and thank you, Greg, for flagging that. I don't think we're under any assumption that we can create new authorities for the Commerce Department or the U.S. Trade Representative to actually fix things. But we want to make sure that as David just said, that they make the link, because any administration always cares very much about what happens in the trade balance. And in my initial conversations with especially the U.S. Trade Representative, they're not making that link. They're not making that connection between what the president is trying to do in terms of supply chain resiliency versus trying to improve our trade balance versus what's going on in the shipping. So we just want to make sure they make that link.
So let me ask another question that I think the answer is here, and I was too embarrassed to ask in the meetings last week because I didn't have the answer. So in my mind, the spigot is running flush and open as heavy as it could be. All these containers coming in from China. So I was saying to myself last week, why are there a shortage of containers in the United States if there's gajillions coming in? Is this paragraph saying that a huge amount of them, they rush to get them back to China to refill them, and they're going back empty?
Yes. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, but they published a number. It was like over 500,000 containers went left empty just during the month of April.
Wow.
Yeah, it's astounding.
It's basically free shipping going back, and there's nothing in them.
Correct.
That's
Which is
crazy.
where the FMC comes in, because it violates the Shipping Act.
Boy, that shows you how screwed up as a country we are. Okay, thank you. This has been very enlightening to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
And Greg, to that point, go ahead.
So I've been doing this for a while now. I think what we're not understanding, or what we are probably not capturing, is that traditionally 60% of the ship always used to take containers back empty. Lately, that ratio has gone up to 80%. So even in good times, even in good times, we always had a trade imbalance. It's just gotten worse in the last few months, and I think it's important for all our members to also understand that fact, that in the past it wasn't like 100 containers coming in, 100 containers going out fully loaded. Even in the past, half the containers were still going back empty because of the lack of export cargo, and now it's because of lack of containers that has gotten worse. I just wanted to point that out, please.
Thank you, Shaza.
Yeah, and to that point, that's one of the reasons that we worded in that one-page document, saying that these are recent issues exacerbated by the past 15, 16 months with the COVID pandemic, but also recognizing that these issues, some of these issues, were very clear and very present before that, but now the pressure has been redoubled over the last year with the huge influxes and the differences. And also, to Greg's point, this document will be sent to everyone after the meeting, along with a recording of the meeting. And in that, I'm going to, at the issues area where it says just the 6 bullet points, you'll see, as is in the one pager, the issue areas that we kind of get deeper into. And I'll just make sure I include those at the end of the slide. So,
do you want to add that after leave full, 60 to 80%?
Exactly. I just made that note. That's a good talking.
In parentheses, leaving empty?
Yeah, exactly.
It's shocking.
Yes. Excellent points. Thank you, guys.
Pressing.
So for the logistics wise, as always, I would suggest joining early just to make sure that we can connect roughly about 5 minutes early, or at least 2 or 3 minutes early. That way you can make sure your the link is correct for you, or send me an email, of course, if you're having any issue, and we'll make sure that we can get you on as soon as possible. It's one of those. The one thing that you kind of hate is, especially in this virtual setting, is when meetings are starting a little later, because if you're in the personal office, someone can go into their staff while you sit out in the lobby and wait for someone to show up. But here, they're dedicating their FaceTime to you, whether or not you are there. So let's try to make sure that we get there a couple of seconds early, and let me know if you have any issues. As for the run of the show, I just want to run this past you guys. If there are any suggestions or questions or concerns, please feel free. But we'd like to, an ISRI staff member will be joining you in these meetings. So just to give that, hello, and why we are contacting them, and then turning it over to the ISRI members to give their introductions, and then going back to the staff, or if there is a person who feels comfortable, if you feel comfortable, going ahead and discussing the issues. But in that introduction, state your name, of course, company name, locations of your business, to make sure that they understand that they're speaking to some type of constituent representative. If you are not personally in that state or that district, but your business has a location there, then make that differentiation, so that they understand that you're speaking on behalf of their company in that state. Going into I'll go into the story part after this. But of course, be respectful of not only the staff time, but if there is someone else, another business representative on the call with you, to make sure that we are giving each person a fair time to speak, ask questions, those kind of things. And of course, please remain muted when you're not speaking, and you'll be on camera at all times. I know that we're 15 months into this virtual setting, but I can't express how much that, as you've probably seen in meetings throughout the last year, that can derail something as well. So telling your story, of course, as I mentioned, giving the staff a second at the beginning to just let them know, what, acknowledge, if you were signed on to the letter that went out to the FMC, the House or Senate letter, thank you for that. You were on the Transportation Committee's chair, so that's why we're reaching out to you, turning it over to give introductions, and then briefly telling your story. Why? Because that gives a context and a relevance to the issues in that specific state. It puts a face on the story, so that it's not just data that someone's looking at. As a former congressional staff member, and many of you others who may have worked on the Hill, you'll see when you go back into the legislative bay, sometimes people will have photos up or some type of just reminders of something that they helped with, that just kind of shows who they helped. That's one of those motivating things that you need as a staff member when you're kind of going through a very, very thankless job. So put it in a context, be brief, try to focus on the direct and secondary effects of the shortages or the congestion on your business. I mentioned that because sometimes when you start thinking about, XYZ has had this result, which results in this on my business. And then if you go 4 or 5 more things down the road, you're no longer, speaking anything exactly that's going to really help them do their job on the Hill and make sure that they take steps necessary to relieve that pressure. So just try to keep it focused on the core, the nugget, or also the tangential bottom line kind of things, or personnel, staff stories, those kind of things. Don't, of course, insult demeanor pressure. We are there to work with them to try to bring some resolution to the issues. They're just doing their job. They sometimes, in person, as you may have noticed, some seem very engaged, some seem a little distant. Don't take that personally at all. Everyone's kind of zoomed out, and especially if you're on the Hill and you're doing 10 to 11 meetings in person a day, they are doing 10 to 11 Zoom meetings a day. So it's mostly senior staff that we'll be speaking with. There may be 1 or 2 more junior staff on there, but that number 1 shouldn't affect your feeling as whether or not you were heard, because they are paid to get the specific message and as accurate as possible back to the senators so they can make their decision. But just make sure we are respectful of whoever's time that you've gotten. So far, we actually have 1 Senate level meeting with the senator. And I believe that we may have a few other at the representative or Senate level, but like I said, most of our meetings are with the senior staff or the legislative director or something of that nature. So you will have a captive, hopefully we will all have captive audiences. And lastly, I'd like to mention avoiding using acronyms as much as possible. I know that we're in a very, if you're dealing with something every day, it may be very easy to slide into acronyms that you are used to using all the time, but sometimes you may have staff that are not that aware of how your business operates, so try to avoid that. And also try to avoid bringing up other unrelated issues. It's, we want to come into this speaking about this specific issue. If we bring up environmental justice or anything like that, it can not only derail the conversation, but sometimes staff don't really take that well because we've prepared them to speak about this issue. We've briefed them on the issues that we're about to bring to the table. As well as the asks. So that allows them to prepare for it, get some responses from other staff members, input, those kind of things. So when we bring something that isn't directly related to the purpose of this specific round of meetings, it can end up having not a negative effect, but sometimes people will make a mental note that, that's one of those organizations or something like that, where they'll surprise you and, hit you with 3 other issues that they did not mention before that. We will have ample opportunity over the next months and years in this Congress administration to reach out and touch points with these exact same offices on other issues. So definitely be respectful of that if you do not mind.
David, we have 2 hands up. Why don't we take 1 second to allow them in case they have questions about what we just discussed. I'm not sure who was first, Sean or Michaela.
Michaela,
yeah. Hello, everyone. It was nothing. I raised my hand 3-4 slides,
Oh, sorry.
But it was about, it was just a comment about, the container going back empty and how we are going to phrase it, meaning from my experience, this is more of an infrastructure issue with the terminal and not with the shipping line, because the terminal allow vessel into the port only for a couple of days. So there is no time actually to work some of those bookings, right? And this is driven primarily by the terminals. So if they give you booking that you do not have time to work, because the terminal is setting the dates, it's not really, I just want to make sure that we phrase it like in a way that we really don't know why there are so many containers going back empty. It might be a decision by the shipping line, but then from our experience, is actually infrastructure and terminal issues where the terminal is so congested that allow only a couple of days, sometimes even only 1 day for the vessel to work at the terminal. Thus, of course, nobody can work those bookings, and the empty container that are at the terminal at the time of the vessel calling for a day, they are being loaded and sent back. So I just want to make sure we don't say, oh, the shipping line are sending back container empty, because I think it's a little bit more complex than that. And there's more to do with the infrastructure than anything else.
Well, but correct me if I'm wrong, the container goes to a site and then gets unloaded, and it's going right back to the terminal as opposed to going to another site to get reloaded. I don't know how these containers work. Maybe it's a wrong time to have this conversation, but I wouldn't think it goes back to the terminal and then, if needed, back out to a site to get loaded. Maybe it does.
Yeah, the issue here is that when you have a booking, a shipping line give you a booking today, most of the booking work only couple of days, meaning you have the time 1-2 days, sometimes 3 if you're lucky, to pick up 20 containers. And we are talking about commodities, so we are talking not about 1 container at a time. We're talking about booking with 20 containers at a time, 10, 5. So the line issue a booking to you that sometimes work only one day. So they tell you, okay, you are fine for 20 containers, but guess what? The terminal is giving us only 1 or 2 days toward the vessel, right? So we have plenty of bookings in the export arena. It's just the timing, the time that the terminal gives to this vessel that are delayed, that are not delayed, that is all the issue, is so constrained that we as exporter cannot load those containers in time. If we don't load them, pick them up, load them, return them full, whatever container is empty at the terminal, because I didn't have the time to pick it up, right? Because I only have 1 day to go and pick up 20 containers, maybe hundreds, maybe 200 all over, you know, in New Jersey, New York, New Jersey. All those empty containers that happen to be there at that time, they get reloaded on a vessel and sent back, right? Sometime, and the shipping line are moving, of course, empty containers from one depot back to the terminal, because I'm not picking up the empty container because I do not have time to work that specific booking. But this is not only, what I want to say is not only a shipping line decision, is also due to the, you know, high revenue, to the lower request of lower free time at destination, but is also due to the fact that those terminals, because of the delay of the vessel, let the exporter work booking only for a couple of days. And that is a major issue.
So we have other,
Yeah, if I, this is Silvana from SA Recycling. Just as an overview on her comments, the terminals vessel schedules are coming from the shipping line. The terminals do not dictate the ship schedule. What is happening now is that the shipping lines are giving enough time for the vessels to be offloaded, but not enough time for the vessels to be loaded with the exports. So it is completely controlled by the shipping lines, not by the terminal. So if the shipping lines tell the terminal, I'm giving 2 days, it is 2 days. The terminal will follow the shipping line schedule. They will work doing whatever is going on at the terminal, but at the end of the day, it's the shipping line is the one that will cut the vessel and stop loading export based on whatever they needed.
Silvana, I disagree with you, because it's the terminal that if a vessel is late, the terminal can only work so many vessels at a time because of productivity, because of space, because of timing. So the terminal, in fact, if you want to check the dates on your booking, you only go on the terminal to check what dates. The terminal is the one that will tell the line, this vessel, I can only allow you to work 2 or 3 days, right? Of course, the offloading goes first, but it's the terminal that is deciding when the vessel schedule is too congested because they have too many vessels at a time. Is the terminal that is cutting the days, the number of days that the vessel can work. It's mainly the terminal, and those are you can talk to the terminal, you can talk to the shipping line. Those are the issue that we have now. That the shipping line have more interest to ship back empty, at certain time, a certain point. I'm sure they do, but it's more an infrastructure issue. If the terminal had productivity to work all the vessels coming in, 4 or 5 vessels at the congestion period because they are out of schedule, they will allow the usual time for a vessel to be worked at the terminal. But the terminal really decides.
Are they experiencing labor shortages as well in the terminal?
Yes,
and that's
of course.
compounding the situation.
Oh, of course, with the pandemic, of course. But if a terminal has all of a sudden, instead of having 2 vessels to work those 2-3 days, as 5 vessels to work, they are waiting out and they are contracting the time that the vessel can work in the terminal. Of course, offloading is the first, right? They come in, they are loaded, and then they give us maybe only 1 day to load the full container back. Now, that will be good for the FNC to investigate. Is it really the terminal, or is it really the shipping line that they are deciding how many days a vessel can work? But from my understanding, talking to Port of Americas, I mean, the terminal do have a say on how many days a vessel can work at the terminal, because they are congested, right? They cannot keep the vessel open. So that's, to me, I will be careful how we phrase the shipping line and sending back container empty.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think if there's one thing that I've definitely learned on this project, that there's a lot of different views on what's going on in different situations, which is sort of the point of doing this fly-in, is, you know, talking about it from each of our company's experiences. We have a number of hands up. Sean, yours has been up quite a long time. Is it related to this discussion or elsewhere? Otherwise, I might call on others related to this.
It's a separate one, but I mean, if there's timing is of the essence, maybe we should move on.
Okay, we will in a second, but I want to allow. So Shahzad, you were up first, and then Joel, and then David.
Yeah, hi. Can we go over to slide number 5 at this point of time? I just wanted to talk a little about that one and how we should consider making our case in front of this. Now, at the end of the day, the shipping companies are the ones that appoint the terminals. So it's between the terminals and the shipping companies. They need to get the act together. We should not be paying the price because of their incompetence, because of their miscommunication, or whatever they decide between the two of them. We contract with the shipping companies that we're supposed to move X amount of boxes. And I think this point out here, which says expand pressure on agencies, that might be a very good point for us to discuss over here and say, let's make sure that the shipping companies and the terminals work together to give us enough time to return our containers back. That should be our way to work work ahead.
Sure,
Thank you.
Very important.
Joel?
Yep.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I totally agree. I think that whether it's congestion or some of these other, bigger, broader issues that we're not going to solve right at this one meeting, we have different perspectives. We're not having problems getting empties. So the fact that we can get an empty, but they can change the rules once we've gotten the empty, I think that's a real big issue for us, and something that is within their control, but not my control. So I think that's a really important point. And the other thing is, if they can load 80% of ships full when they want to, then to me, loading 40% full is a decision someone's making. And so where I think we've got to come together is whether that's better electronic information sharing, whether it's better infrastructure at the ports, whether it's all the investments. These are all things certainly ISRI would have supported regardless of this major issue that's coming up right now. But I think the fact of the matter is they are in control of all of the things that are costing our industry members quite a lot of money and time and expense. And it's affecting the government's balance of trade, the balance of funds, risk management on globally traded metals that the United States' companies are not allowed to take advantage of or be putting off. So in my mind, it doesn't really matter what the root cause is. We want the root cause to be solved, no question about it. We want to get into those at some point, but the reality is we should be talking about what happens when these anomalies are occurring and why our industry members have to pay the price of it.
Great point.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Joel. David?
Yeah, listen, just taking a step back and looking at the procedure of these meetings, ISRI, you're the professionals, you're going to introduce us. Shouldn't our role be to give the anecdotal evidence of what's happening out there? And I don't know that we need to come to a conclusion whether it's the ports or the shipping lines. We're requesting hearings so that Congress can determine what the issue is. And I think the biggest ask is for them to do an investigation. This is what we're experiencing. Help us,
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think that's it. for us to be deciding or telling them what the issue is. We really don't know, you know. We can tell from this discussion today that we really don't know, you know.
Exactly, and like, thank you for that point. That's exactly what we're hoping that you guys bring to the table, is that anecdotal story. And even speaking to Shad, thank you for that. That was an excellent way of, you know, speaking your situation to the issue. The staff, like I said, will be there to, you know, frame the issue, frame why we're speaking to them, and those kind of things. And what we really want you to do is bring to the table your anecdotes, or even, you know, how you might see the issue if you did want to go ahead and put those in, Joel and Shazad, those kind of things. That'll also be, you know, draw an additional link to them. But the primary purpose of you guys having this meeting is to give that anecdotal. So definitely appreciate that, David. And everyone, if you've already spoken, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and will you guys, like, for instance, there's different people meeting with the different senators or congressmen. For instance, I don't know, the Randy Goodman's meeting with anybody. He's had issues that we haven't had. So, you know, depending on who's meeting with whom, will you guys fill in those blanks of the anecdotes too, of what you're hearing from other members? I assume.
Yeah,
you know, that we're not necessarily experiencing.
Yeah, we don't expect you guys to be, you know, experts on all the others. You'll see in that one-page document that there's 6 general issue areas that we've kind of gleaned from the working group, from the trade committee, and those things. So we'll do as much as we can to speak to the other areas where we would like. No one here is probably going to have, you know, all 6 areas covered as far as what they deal and what they do. So we'll definitely try to fill in those other areas. But you're bringing your situation, you know, the specifics on how it affects you to the table. So excellent point, David. Anyone who has spoken, if you've already spoken and your hand is still up, just lower that just so we can keep a track of who is going on. I see Greg, and I know Sean had his hand up. Sean, are you still there?
Yeah.
Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just throw in, build on what Dave said. Dave, it's not just help us, but it's also help us help you. In other words, these shortages of containers are causing shortages of raw materials, which is causing inflation. So it's exasperating what's going on. If we could get more scrap out of here, it would help the supply chain and therefore reduce this inflation, which is getting pretty bad. So it's help us, which would help everybody, is what I'm trying to get at.
Exactly. Sean, you still your hand up there?
David, I'll just catch up with you later. This does not
Gotcha.
take up time. It's all right.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so the last point I'll make here, and then I'm gonna turn over to our communications team to kind of give you what they're doing with this and how that'll really increase, be some great opportunities on that front. Last part here. So after the meeting, kind of during the meeting, but after the meeting, we'll be collecting notes from everyone using a Google form link. If you just click there, it'll be in the slide deck when I send it to you after this meeting. If you click that, it just says your name, your email address, and any notes you might want to submit. That includes any follow-up that you want us to make sure that we do, anything that you caught in there that drew your attention, any thoughts or any feelings that you might have had after the meeting. Of course, please always feel free to do any, and include anything that we could have done better or what you may have left out of the meeting that you wanted to say or anything like that. That right there we'll just use to kind of inform us when we, as you'll see the bottom point there, turn the meeting notes into a generalized report on the trade committee. So none of your specific words or nothing will be attributed to a speaker, but just to kind of give the trade committee a true sense from the member level how these meetings went and how the virtual flying went, and just to kind of embody what the next steps are in that section. Thank you emails. Everyone knows that we all, many times you may feel like you're in a thankless job, but when you're on the Hill, it's very infrequent that you really see, something that makes you feel like your work is appreciated. So it really stands out when people take the time to just send a thank you email. It also serves as an important reminder, restating the issues or restating any follow-up that the staff or member of Congress said that they'll do. It just kind of says, remember, you said you were going to do this, because sometimes they're taking notes. That note may end up in the bottom of some other pile. We are drafting those, so you'll have a sample email. If that's just something you want to cut and paste and send, we'll provide the email address and that sample email. It's really beneficial if you just maybe put a sentence or two in there, just reminding them of, something that you said to them as far as your anecdote goes. But feel free, like I said, just to cut and paste that in and enter the email address and send that as a thank you. We'll list in that the reminding them of the issues, those kind of things. So be on the lookout for that, and please try to take that step to make sure that they remember who and why they met.
And just to be clear, because I know that we did have an issue pop up at our fly-in last year, David will make sure that you have all of those email addresses that you need to send the thank you notes to.
Yes, email addresses and and anyone else that they might mention if the staffer says, please CC somebody on that. So yes, thank you, Adina. With that, I'm finished with this part, and I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues in the communications department to let them know about an exciting opportunity that this brings. And I'll stop screen share. So.
Thanks, David. I'll just speak for a minute and then let Dan and Hannah follow me. So we're looking to definitely showcase and highlight the work you all will be doing this week in advocating and engaging on behalf of the industry. So for Scrap News, we're looking to write a couple of articles and maybe speak with some of you, as well as looking to have at least one of you as a guest on the Scrap Chat podcast this week. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. I'll walk you through the process. We'll do a prep sheet beforehand. It's just kind of having a conversation about the importance of these efforts and what you all are doing. And I don't know if Hannah or Dan wanted to add anything.
Yeah, sure. Basically what Rachel just said, Dan and I are the two staff writers for Scrap News, and we would definitely love to hear your stories. Kind of like what David was talking about in like a smaller level, we also really like to hear about and tell the story of in like a more public way to help get the word out and, talk about what's going on with the industry. You can reach out to, either me or Dan, and I can put my email in the chat. And if you are uncomfortable, please know that if you prefer to remain anonymous, we can certainly help you remain anonymous. But yeah, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, and so two things we want to accomplish through all of this, and sorry, Joel. One is, of course, is that we are just continuously getting the story out about the impacts of all of the shipping issues on our industry. But second of all is also to get the word out to the membership of just how ISRI is an advocate and how we really rely so much on your support and your help with these engagements with your lawmakers. And so it's just getting a little bit of credit for the fact that we actually are doing this and you've been so much a part of that. So, please, we're looking for volunteers. We don't want to put anybody in a pressure point, but if you can, we'd be so grateful. Sorry to interrupt you, Joel. Okay.
Any questions on anything that we've discussed so far? Got it. Well, hearing none, please feel free to reach out to any of us on staff, Hannah and Rachel on the communication side. As Rachel noted in the chat box here, if you're interested in being on the guest podcast or offering a little bit more detail on your story, we'd love to get that story out and draw some attention to this. So with that,
we can stay on for a couple minutes if anybody just wants to talk to us directly. That is absolutely fine. But thank you all for taking the time this afternoon, and we'll see you over the course of the next few days.
Thanks, everyone.
David and Dina, could I snag you two for a minute?
Yeah. Hey, Sean.
This might be a silly question because it's I guess somewhat not related, but since some of us, I actually maybe imagine most of us that's dealing with a lot of export are in Democratic-led states, is it useful to bring up climate change and like the impact of trucks sitting there and idling at the ports or anything like that? Because I know it's not somewhat related, but I don't want to, I know David mentioned don't bring up like EJ and other stuff. And so.
Well, I think it's very, especially given that is one of this administration's big priorities, it kind of gives them an inroad to, or leverage to say why this is important on many fronts. As long as that the the topic is that, then I definitely don't see an issue with that. I mean, if something's completely not directly tied to it in the way that you can state it, then I think that's when we start to get a little away from the issues. But definitely, I mean, if that's something that especially your member is interested in, then I don't see how it would hurt. I wouldn't lean in that direction too much or go too far into that. But I mean, definitely making that tie would really help, especially given that that's a huge priority of this administration.
Okay, so don't put it in the elevator pitch, but if it comes up, talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fits into the congestion piece quite well. That you have trucks just sitting there running, and there's just another symptom of the port congestion.
Yeah.
And I know your question is more tied to climate, Sean, but we did identify in our paper some of the downstream impact, not just on getting containers inland, but that the truck drivers themselves who get paid on, I think, number of trips. And if they have to sit in line all day long, they're just saying, whatever, I can go make money somewhere else. And, so they leave their job. And so that was something that was also identified by the working group, that we're already in a CDL shortage. And now you have drivers who, even more, that are leaving for something that's just more lucrative for them rather than sitting in line all day.
No, makes sense. Thanks for answering that.
Thanks.
Do we know, Adina, who from the ISRI staff is going to be in each meeting? Do we know that yet? I looked at the thing that David sent us. David, I saw it, it's on my calendar now. But I don't think it said who from ISRI is going to be there.
Well, I'll definitely be on. So far, none of the calls overlap or are scheduled at the same time, so I'll be on some of them. And I know Adina and Billy are anything that at this point is fitting into their calendar will be more than. I don't want to speak for you guys. I'll just go ahead and let Adina say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, just for myself, David, I'm tied up every morning this week on a Basel Convention related meeting. So anything that's scheduled in a morning Eastern time, I will not be able to attend, but some of the afternoon ones I will be there. So I'll pop in and out, as will our communications team. And I know that Billy's got a couple that he's identified where, he's close with the staff or the member.
Okay.
Yeah, but there may be and David said that he'll be on all of them, but yes, there may be an occasion where we just show up out of nowhere.
Well, that's obviously the answer is David's going to be at ours, we know, and anybody else. You're all frosting on the cake. Anybody else?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of the way Adina's and I have kind of opposite schedules, so we'll be popping into the opposite ones from each other.
We don't want to stay on unless you need us or keep you any longer than you need to, but we're here to answer any other questions. Otherwise, we can close the meeting. It's up to you.
Adina?
Sure.
I have two questions. One, at tomorrow's meeting with Senator Fisher, do you know if Chris Bedell will be on?
Yeah, I believe he was invited, and I believe that he is going to, or has RSVP to it, so yes.
John?
Hi. So yes, it's Chris's intention. I didn't know when.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And the basis of thank you, John. The basis is because I have some small ball, if you will, anecdotal, but maybe not be representative of sort of the big picture. And so that'll certainly be helpful. The second question has to do with our meeting with Senator Baldwin or her staff. And it was suggested that at least as a placeholder, we interject the issues that we're having with the Canadian National, because of their elimination of the scrap gone fleet. How do we interject that for at least a placeholder so that we can have further discussion without hijacking this conversation?
Is someone else from Wisconsin going to be in that meeting as well?
I didn't see anybody invited, I don't think.
I'm double checking now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too. Yeah, I mean, because Megan handled and Senator Baldwin's office handles all the transportation issues. So might as well. I mean, there's no one else.
Yeah, no one
you're
else.
crowding out. So.
Yeah. I just didn't want to, I mean, I'm very mindful that this is more of a single purpose, or this is a single purpose meeting, but as a couple of years ago, we did meet with her on other rail issues, and so that, but I don't want to lose, I don't want to lose the opportunity if we can do it without jeopardizing the message.
Yeah, I think after we do the port stuff, then you can certainly come back and say, and I have a small issue with the
Yeah.
Throw it in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Especially if you met with her, in the past on it. It's yes.
And she'll probably call her favorite other friend from Wisconsin, Patrick Fuchs, at the STP group.
Well, she can call my neighbor that's across from the lake from me, Senator Ron John.
Mm-hmm. Probably get more out of Patrick.
Cool. If no one else has anything, I will go ahead and see you guys throughout the week.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.